even if you wait a month to respond, if your response is genuine and it's reflective and thought out and productive, then the month isn't going to even register in their brain. They're not going to question the length of time. That's not the point of this. They want change or movement, not validation.
Welcome back to the When Our Adult Children Walk Away podcast, dedicated to one of the most painful and one of the least talked about experiences a family can go through, estrangement. I am Dr. Janet Steinkamp, and I'm here today with my daughter, Bree. And if you're new to us, new to these conversations, please know that this is a no blame, no shame, and no judgment community. As many of you know, Bree and I hosted our first virtual office hours a couple weeks ago. Not surprisingly, the questions you all brought were not just good, but they sparked really important discussion. And as always, Bree and I gained some new insights too. So we decided to do something a little different this time. We are going to begin a series of episodes called After Hours. So once we host our office hours, we are going to then put together a podcast episode and highlight the main topics that come up in those conversations. Keep in mind, these episodes are a light touch. The topics that we talk about are really very complex and nuanced. These topics require a much deeper conversation and consideration. The topic that we are bringing forward today from our last office hours is about what and how we communicate and why it matters. This topic and conversation directly relate to the words we choose, our tone, our intention, our consideration, our timing, and what's going on in our life and in our adult child's life. If you've ever tried to communicate in person by text or in an email and watched it land completely wrong, that's what we're talking about. And you might be worried that you might communicate in the future in a way that escalates. So this is the episode that's for you if those are concerns. So Bree, share with the listeners the top points that you wanted to bring and that we discussed after office hours.
So the three main things that came up that we discussed were understanding who you're talking to, knowing when to say something and if you should even say something, and then also staying emotionally neutral through the communication. Those are what I remember being the main topics.
Right. I agree. I think those were really the critical aspects of the conversation.
So should we dig into the first one, the understanding who you're talking to?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so we talked about how when you're writing something to your adult child, you need to understand that somebody else is probably also going to read this letter. There's many different people who could be, but there's going to be at least one other person that reads this letter, most likely, and they're going to have an opinion, and they're going to share it with your adult child. So you need to be thinking about who could be on the other end, either supporting them or guiding them or, whatever that might look like on that end, somebody else is involved. Do you remember who we said that could be?
Yeah, I made a little list here because I thought it was interesting, the list that came up in the conversation. So the people that we talked about were people like attorneys, therapists, the influence of social media, maybe a gatekeeper partner or an influential partner. Maybe if you're a parent who's in a divorce situation, maybe your ex is really still very involved and influencing or interpreting for your adult child on the other end. It might be siblings. It might be some cultural differences or some value differences if your adult child is getting involved in maybe a different political conversation or a different religious perspective. All those things can be influencing or filtering how your message lands with the adult child. And so, do you have any thoughts on how you might accommodate that? Or how does that impact how people communicate?
Well, I think it's important to take a step back, just in general, and really think about your adult child's situation at home or at work or whatever they're personal life really involves. Think about the people who have been involved that you know of. Think about maybe things that they've said that have clued you in on who could be involved in this stage of their life. But you really have to step into their shoes and think about who's around them, who's influenced them in the past, and then figuring out what kind of influence they are having or could be having, and choose your words carefully because a third party is going to hear your words potentially different than your adult child would. And also, I mean, in specific situations, there might be somebody else involved who is actually more so taking the reins on this than your adult child. And so you need to be thinking about what messages do you not only want to get to your adult child, but need to get to whoever else is involved. And how do you want those to sound based on who they are and what their intentions are?
So in particular, I think of a situation where there's a coercive partner or a gatekeeper.
Mm.
So I think what you're saying is you have to state a message or communicate a message so it gets through that gatekeeper and they see it as non-threatening and safe. So it gets to your adult child. You've got to make it through the gauntlet. I think of Red Rover, send so-and-so right over. You've got to get through, right? You've got to get through that gatekeeper.
Right. And in terms of a gatekeeper, it's not necessarily just whether or not the letter will get or the communication will get to your adult child. It's whether or not they'll even be able to read it for what it is, because somebody else might be upset about it and they're going to twist it and everything you put out there is just available for,
Right.
and then that could be even a therapist. I mean, you don't know who is going to have something to say about it and how they're going to see it, and it can be twisted so quickly and so easily, and then the actual message is lost.
So if I'm listening to our conversation right now, I'm like, well, then why do I even try it? Because how am I supposed to navigate that? Right.
Right.
So, I mean, what comes to mind for me is no shorthand. We as parents and our children, we can speak in half sentences, and there's kind of an inside communication, so to speak. So you have to make sure your statements say what you mean, and you have to mean what you say. There's no shorthand. You can't leave things out. You can't make reference to the past in a way that a stranger might be open to saying, well, you know, what's that? And then they get into interpretation. Is that making sense?
Yes, it is. And I think it is a nice transition to the next point about knowing when to say something or if something should be said.
Right. There is an earlier podcast episode that talks about staying in your lane as a parent. How do you know when to speak up and when to have your thoughts privately and air them to somebody else later, but not necessarily to your adult child? How do you sort that out? And I would encourage people to go listen to that. There are 10 sort of rules of thumb for staying in your lane. I think that would be something that might be really helpful to people who are having questions right now about how do I do this?
So we had talked about the first thing to really think about is what's your goal in the communication?
Right.
Is it to be heard or to defend, to de-escalate, to just get any kind of connection or communication with your adult child, just to have something be read and potentially get a response?
Right. I'm going to dig into that one a little bit. In that discussion, we talked about some really simple pointers like short and sweet. Your point about keeping things emotionally neutral. The idea of writing to gain insight, get to know your adult child better, get some more information about what's going on for them, their perspective, how they're feeling about things. It has to be metered and written in a way that fits them, that they will hear, not necessarily to defend, clarify, explain. All of that very quickly becomes gaslighting, and it lands like you're being parent-splained or whatever the term is.
Yeah, I think like in simple terms, we just said if your goal is about you, then don't do it.
Right.
If this is about you wanting something or you needing something or you feeling something, then just don't, because it's most likely not going to land well.
Right. Even if it is just a response, even if you need them to say, I love you, even if you're just so hungry for any kind of contact, it's likely to be negative contact. There has to be a purpose.
Yes. So we also talked about when and if you should say something. And we had talked about your rule of waiting at a minimum of 24 hours.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And my opinion is it should be, 72 hours minimum. As an adult child, that would be my suggestion. But that's also because I think if we're talking about like a letter or an in-depth communication that you received from your adult child and now you're responding, you have to think about how much time and effort they likely put into that communication. It's not going to fit every time, sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's quick messages or something that they're sending, but if it's a thought out message, you have to think about how much time and effort they put into it, how much they wrote and then rewrote and then edited and had so and so look it over, and to make sure whatever their purpose of the communication is going to be received by the parent.
Right. They're writing because they care how it lands. They're trying to communicate
Right.
with
This is
real
like in
intention.
depth. Yeah,
Right.
in depth emotional writing where they are spilling all of their, even if it's just surface level, all of their feelings, and it's their time to be emotional. Everybody is emotional in the situation, but if our goal is reconnecting, then this is their time to be emotional. And they've thought it out. They've, lost sleep over it probably. This is not an easy thing to do as a kid, to write these really emotionally charged, in-depth letters, whether it be, well, just with new requests, any kind of boundaries or new requests. It's scary as an adult child to write those things. So if you respond right away with oh my gosh, I hear you, I see what you're saying, anything like that, even if it's agreeable, the fact that you're responding quickly, it kind of hurts. Like, it's a little bit offensive, because it's like, I just put so much time and effort into that,
Right.
and you just waited 4 hours to send out a quick response. It makes the person receiving it question the um
Like the authenticity.
yes,
The real
right,
reflection, taking in their message, considering it, really,
yeah,
um, yes, taking time to really absorb the message.
yeah. If you're defending yourself, then that's they're just going to be like, nope, never mind. I didn't even read some, like, half of your
Right.
communications to me. I just wouldn't read it. I'd read the first sentence and I'd be like, nope, this does not feel like it's going to be any different. But that was when you were responding more quickly, or you were, that was earlier on in the process. But whether it be defending or even just agreeing with them completely, it's just not going to feel genuine. I think they're
Right.
just going to question, how did it take me a week to put this one letter together, and you whipped up a response
Right.
agreeing with everything I said, or, apologizing profusely or defending yourself in 12 hours. Like, that's just
Right.
not, we're not on the same level right now
Right.
of dedication to communicating. Even though your intentions are good and you just want to respond and let your child know that you read the letter. And I just think in this situation, the amount of time between the communication isn't what's important, because a lot of times people aren't wanting a lot of communication. So
Right.
taking your time to think it out isn't the problem. Even if you wait a month to respond, if your response is genuine and it's reflective and thought out and productive, then the month isn't going to even register in their brain. They're not going to question the length of time. That's not the point of this. They want change or movement, not validation, because they've already
Right.
written this letter. Like, I remember times I wrote to you guys and I was like, I might never hear back after this, like this, and that's okay. And I had gotten to a point where I was like, I said what I needed to say. We couldn't move forward without me saying this. So if they're not at a point where they're ready to hear this, or they're not going to be willing to hear it, then it sucks, but that is what it is. And I've laid out what I need on my end, and, you know, doesn't mean it wouldn't hurt.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
I
I think take your time.
Yeah, I think that's how I felt when I sent my last letter to you too. I may never hear, but this is what I need to say. I think this is what she needs to hear. And then, I've done as much as I can do. But that letter,
Mhm.
as I've said before in other episodes, took me 6 months to write. It was,
Right.
and
But I could tell.
every iteration you learn more. You see more, you
Mhm.
feel more, you understand more.
Mhm. But I didn't feel, I mean, the silence, when there was the silence for a couple years, like, that was, it was heavy at times, but that was what I expected would happen after a while. So even if it doesn't matter how long it took you to write it, the last letter
Right.
that you sent was the only letter that had any purpose,
Right.
or it was the only productive letter on my end. I know you wrote things along the way that you needed to write and things, but on my end, it was the only letter that I was like, oh, this is different. This is a different kind of letter.
Right.
This does not
Right.
feel the same. She doesn't have to say she's been working on herself. It's very clear. Like, because my mom 2 years ago never could have wrote this letter. Couldn't have even tried to
Yeah.
write this
I
letter.
couldn't have.
Like,
Eh,
yeah.
Yeah, and we fought, and really it fell to these same points: timing, word choice, who was going to hear it, and knowing there was a gatekeeper, and um and keeping it neutral, keeping it emotionally neutral. It wasn't about getting
Hmm.
something from you. It was about clearing the decks, saying my piece, and saying I'm sorry. So I think those were really important points in our conversation in the virtual office hours with parents. And, it's not easy to hear these things necessarily, and yet we know they're powerful. And it isn't just from our conversation and our experience. I hear these things from parents regularly. Why aren't they listening? Why aren't they listening? What do I need to do differently to make sure that they receive what I'm sending? And silence does not mean rejection. It does not mean that they're not thinking about it. It may take them 6 months to think about what they want to say in return. So you have to trust that you're doing your best, you're doing what you need to do, and that you're doing it out of love. Well, this was really good conversation. Again, I know this is a really light touch. I want to invite people to come to virtual office hours. Bring your topics and conversations. There's a lot more to talk about these things. And I want to thank all of you who came to virtual office hours. We love knowing what's on your mind and how we can be most helpful. And just to sort of put a ribbon on this, if this episode stirred something up for you and you want to keep exploring whether that's something personal or something more specific, or you just want space to process, Bree and I would love to have you at our next office hours. You can register for one-on-one coaching at whenouradultchildrenwalkaway.com. It's the website. There's a tab called Virtual Office Hours. You can click on that and you can register to attend another office hours session coming up. If this episode was helpful, please subscribe on the YouTube channel at Dr. Janet Steinkamp. That's the @ Dr. Janet Steinkamp, or wherever you listen to the podcasts. And if you know someone who's struggling to find the right words to communicate with their adult child, share this with them, please. Sometimes just knowing that someone else is asking the same questions can really make a difference.
Thank you for listening to When Our Adult Children Walk Away, presented by Dr. Janet Steinkamp in partnership with Balancing Life's Issues and produced by me, Kai. Want to connect with Dr. Janet? You can find resources, connect with her directly, and learn more about the work we do at whenouradultchildrenwalkaway.com. And be sure to follow and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah,